Greetings and welcome to episode number 10 of Bible Blessings. Today we're going to look at a story of Joseph in the book of Genesis. Probably no other character takes up more space in Genesis than Joseph. Abraham and Jacob are there, but Joseph is actually the one that's given the most focus. A bit of background about him: he was the favorite son of Jacob because he was the first son of the wife that he loved, Rachel. And because of that, he was hated by his brothers because his father showed so much favoritism towards him. And so as a result, when he went to visit them one day, they threw him into a pit and they were wanting to kill him, but ended up selling him as a slave to Egypt. And so we pick it up in Genesis 39, starting in verse 1. The Bible says, "And Joseph was brought down to Egypt, and Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, captain of the guard, an Egyptian, bought him of the hands of the Ishmaelites which he had brought down thither. And the Lord was with Joseph, and he was a prosperous man, and he was in the house of his master the Egyptian. And his master saw that the Lord was with him, and that the Lord made all that he did to prosper in his hand." So even this heathen man, Potiphar, he even saw that the Lord was with him. How? Because everything that Joseph did prospered in his hands. Joseph was hardworking. He did everything to the best of his ability. We're not just talking about spiritual prosperity here. Even Potiphar, a heathen man, could see this. A person that didn't believe in God had to believe in God as a result of how God was blessing Joseph. And so, as a result, all this blessing, even then, came to Potiphar's house. Verse 4, "And Joseph found grace in his sight, and he served him and made him overseer over his house and all that he had put into his hand. And it came to pass from the time that he had made him overseer in his house and over all that he had, that the Lord blessed the Egyptian's house for Joseph's sake. And the blessing of the Lord was upon all that he had in the house and in the field, because of Joseph." Potiphar, a man that did not believe in the true God, because of Joseph, his house was blessed, in the house and even in the field. Verse 6, "And he left all that he had in Joseph's hand, and he knew not aught he had, save the bread which he did eat. And Joseph was a goodly person and well favored." You know, Joseph, he had reason to be angry at God. I mean, it wasn't his fault that he was sold as a slave. It wasn't his fault that his brothers hated him. It wasn't his fault that he had dreams that made his brothers hate him even more. None of that was his fault and of his own doing. He wasn't in Egypt because of something he had done. He could have sat there and he could have had a bad attitude. He could have been angry at God. He could have been depressed and sad. He could have just told himself that now it was the end of his life and there was no point in doing anything. After all, he was the favorite son of his family. He had probably never worked so hard in his life. He, of all people, could have been angry at God because none of this was his fault, and being in this position, he never asked for it. But yet he still did his best for God. He still chose to be faithful. He was faithful in the little things. Faithful to the point that Potiphar was willing to put everything in charge of this slave that he had bought. Everything was committed to Joseph. Potiphar did not need to care and know about anything in his house because everything he trusted to Joseph. That's how much confidence he had in Joseph. This is how much his house had been blessed because of the presence of Joseph. Ecclesiastes chapter 9 verse 10 tells us that whatever your hands find to do, do it with all your might. This is not dependent upon the situation you're in. It's not dependent upon the circumstances, no matter what circumstances we are going through. Let's learn to be faithful even today. Let's do everything to the best of our ability. And maybe today you are in a situation that was not of your own doing. Maybe it really wasn't not your fault. Maybe you were just in the wrong place, in the wrong time. But let's remember that all things work together for good to those who love God, Romans 8:28. If we are faithful to God, He will be faithful back to us and bless us abundantly. We will not only find grace in God's sight, but even in the sight of others and on earth. So friends, let's be faithful today in everything. If you were blessed by the message today, please subscribe and give it a thumbs up. It will help to create more content like this and help to spread the blessing. Thank you and God bless.